In everyone's life, there sometimes appears someone who seems to be the embodiment of the ideal friend or partner. They invariably take the initiative in communication, listen attentively, and are always ready to help. Whether it's the dead of night or the middle of the day, this person is always there, demonstrating emotional support and generosity. They remember important dates, personal experiences, instantly answer calls, and are willing to change their plans to be there. Thanks to them, those around them feel significant and valued. But then something subtle happens. This person doesn't disappear suddenly or dramatically, but gradually dissolves into the lives of others. People stop asking about their affairs, their messages go unanswered. Those around them continue to live their lives, feeling neither anger nor resentment, only a slight apathy. Their warmth and care are not repulsive, but their constant availability and unobtrusiveness lead to them being forgotten. According to Carl Jung, this is not just emotional rejection, but a kind of collapse of psychic energy, a fading of individuality. When a person constantly directs their energy outward, unable to retreat, take pauses, or protect their inner self, they begin to lose themselves. This happens not because they are insufficient, but on the contrary, because they are too much, too often, and too easily accessible. And for the human psyche, what is always available gradually loses its value and significance, as if it ceases to exist. You will find out what happens next to this person at the end. In an era of universal digital connection, when the world praises the ability to be constantly connected, always available, and ready to respond to any message from anywhere on the globe, there is a paradoxical truth. Emotional availability, contrary to expectations, often leads to the opposite effect, a decrease in the value of the individual. A friend who unfailingly says yes, a partner who always initiates communication, or an employee who neglects rest are rarely appreciated. They are perceived as something taken for granted. Modern relationships, whether romantic, friendly, or professional, have turned into complex psychological puzzles. We declare our need for fidelity, consistency, and presence. But at the same time, we subconsciously strive for distance, elevating mystery to a cult. We are irresistibly drawn to what is elusive. This is the insidious trap of excessive availability in a world where scarcity is valued above all else. Lavishly spending time, attention, and empathy, hoping to strengthen ties with those around them, a person faces a discouraging result. They become invisible. What is the reason for this phenomenon? According to Carl Jung, the answer lies in a powerful force that surpasses personality traits or charm: psychic energy. This energy is the fuel that nourishes our thoughts, emotions, and presence. The continuous outflow of this energy into conversations, conflicts, and consolations not only depletes our spirit, but also undermines our sense of self. This crisis is not obvious. It develops imperceptibly. It manifests as exhaustion, as endless reflections, as a feeling of isolation even when surrounded by people. There is a feeling that all actions are performed correctly, but gradually lose their relevance. Carl Jung argued that instead of wallowing in resentment, one should strive for individuation, the return of one's psychic energy, the unification of the inner world, and the achievement of wholeness. It's not about being available to others, but about being rooted in oneself. In a world where dependence on the external prevails, the presence that knows when to withdraw is the most attractive. Carl Jung viewed the mind not simply as a mechanism for logical operations and information storage. He saw it as a complex living system, fueled by a mysterious, invisible energy which he called psychic. This is not an electric current or an adrenaline rush, but something much more personal and profound. Psychic energy is the primordial source for attention, feelings, imagination, and vitality. It is what animates a person, allows them to experience deep emotions, think clearly, find meaning in what is happening, and connect with the world. However, there's a serious obstacle. The supply of psychic energy is by no means limitless. Like funds in a bank account, the charge of a mobile phone battery, or the oxygen supply in a confined space, personal psychic energy tends to be depleted, especially when used unwisely. Every yes said instead of a sincere no. Every check of the phone in the hope of approval. Every excessive rumination over a message, a glance, or silence. All this leads to a leakage of valuable energy. And if a timely reboot does not occur, emotional bankruptcy ensues. Carl Jung argued that psychic energy circulates in two directions: outward into the surrounding world, towards people and various distractions, and inward towards self-analysis and personal growth. Modern life, unfortunately, is structured in such a way as to constantly involve a person in the external flow. Notifications, social media, the constant need to be connected, all of this relentlessly demands attention. The desire to please others, codependency, fear of rejection, all these factors also deplete emotional resources. Even constant politeness, when it is not sincere, represents a serious energy leak. Ultimately, a person gives their most valuable inner resource to people who don't deserve it, platforms that don't care about them, and habits that leave them empty. Imagine a person's psychic energy as a sacred fire, requiring careful handling. If treated carelessly and unwisely, it can quickly fade, leaving only ashes. However, if this fire is protected and cared for, it can illuminate everything around it that a person touches. This is why some people, appearing in a certain place, are able to instantly transform the atmosphere. They carry a concentrated charge of energy because they have not dissipated themselves in futile attempts to please everyone. Instead, they have directed their life force inward, and now it radiates outward in a powerful stream, influencing others. Unfortunately, most people are not even aware that their psychic energy is constantly leaking. A person who is always ready to listen to other people's problems involuntarily turns into an emotional dumping ground for others. A partner who sends incessant messages becomes just an intrusive background noise. An employee who can't say no risks turning into an office doormat that everyone wipes their feet on. Such people cease to be perceived as strong personalities, seen only as safe, predictable, and ultimately boring companions. Psychic energy, given away without limit or discernment, does not evoke feelings of love and admiration. On the contrary, it breeds apathy and indifference. As Carl Jung wisely warned, losing control over the direction of one's energy is tantamount to losing control over one's own personality. To regain presence of mind, inner strength, and self-respect, one must learn to protect their energy as carefully as they protect life itself, because in essence, it is a person's life force. It is for this reason that human nature is prone to chasing the unattainable, which is rooted in the deep mechanisms of our brain. At first glance, it seems that we strive for love, stability, care, and attention. However, if we face the truth, a more complex picture emerges. We are attracted, fascinated, and even driven mad by uncertainty. Modern neurobiological research confirms this fact. The level of dopamine, the hormone of anticipation, increases sharply, not when the desired is received, but in the process of expecting it. It's not the kiss itself that matters, but only its probability. When a person distances themselves, when their attachment becomes inconsistent, the brain doesn't just miss them, it becomes obsessed. Uncertainty is addictive because it activates the same reward centers as gambling. Each unanswered message is like pulling the lever of a slot machine, and each delay in responding is like spinning the wheel of fortune. When the desired attention is finally received, a person experiences a surge of energy and joy, but this feeling is fleeting. The brain quickly adapts to constancy, and what is always available becomes a familiar background. We stop noticing the ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, and even the presence of a partner who is always there. Availability extinguishes desire, while absence only intensifies it. Ultimately, we strive not for what we already have, but for what we are not sure we can keep. This inner struggle and the pursuit of the unattainable is the driving force behind many human actions and desires. In psychology, there is a phenomenon known as scarcity bias, when people tend to overvalue what is rare, limited in quantity, or difficult to access. This instinct is rooted in the distant past, when access to food was limited and high social status directly affected the chances of survival. In modern society, this principle manifests itself, for example, in the fact that people who demonstrate emotional detachment often seem more influential. It's not about their superiority, but about their scarcity. Detachment serves as a signal of high social value, as if saying, I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I don't chase after anyone, others chase after me. Thus, constant emotional, digital, or energetic availability can unintentionally send the opposite signal. It seems that a person is always online because they have nothing better to do, or responds instantly because they have no one else to talk to. Even if this is far from the truth, such a perception reduces attractiveness. A paradoxical situation arises. The more effort a person puts in, the less they are valued. Conversely, the less effort they demonstrate, the more attention they attract. This principle applies not only in romantic relationships, but also in many other areas of life. Consider the artist whose work remained misunderstood for a long time, but subsequently brought him the glory of a legend. Or a job that is extremely difficult to get, which automatically increases its prestige. Even a friend who always has a busy schedule seems more significant in the eyes of others. With such an understanding of human psychology, a logical question arises. What should we do with this baggage of knowledge? This is not about embarking on a slippery path of manipulation or weaving intrigues. Rather, it is necessary to stop wasting valuable life energy on those who do not deserve it at all. After all, the truth is that love that requires complete self-denial ceases to be love in its pure form. Respect, which has to be begged for, loses its true value. In his time, Carl Jung warned against excessive self-sacrifice. By doing so, a person risks losing something fundamental that underlies the true connection between people, that very mystery, that attractive secret. Virtue and kindness are elevated to a cult, as if they are always crystal clear, selfless, noble, and divine. But what if some manifestations of kindness are dictated not by love, but by banal fear? What if unconditional agreement, constant availability, and the habit of putting the interests of others above one's own are not a manifestation of generosity, but a form of self-denial? Carl Jung called this the shadow, the dark hidden corners of the personality that a person suppresses or denies, considering them unacceptable to society. This could be anger that a person carefully hides, needs that they silence in order to appear accommodating and easy to get along with, or boundaries that they never set out of fear of being rejected. Often, human kindness turns into a carefully constructed mask behind which hides a desire to earn the favor of others, or at least avoid loneliness and rejection. It is worth considering when and under what circumstances the idea arose that usefulness is a guarantee of security and acceptance. Who instilled the belief that openly expressing one's own needs can alienate other people? As a rule, the roots of this problem go deep into personal experience, into childhood years marked by unpredictable parental behavior or emotional neglect. At some point, a person learns a cruel rule. If I am always good, I will not be abandoned. This forms a stable pattern of behavior where the individual takes on the role of rescuer, empath, a person who never expresses dissatisfaction. However, behind this constant smile, their own personality gradually fades away. After all, trying to please everyone around is not a way to maintain harmony, but rather a quiet, imperceptible war against oneself. Here lies a psychological paradox that escapes the attention of most people. Kindness can become an instrument of control. By continuously giving, a person hopes deep down that they will be needed, that their efforts will be appreciated, that they will be noticed. This is a kind of deal, disguised as virtue. If I am always around and ready to help, maybe they will stay. If I love them strongly enough, maybe they will reciprocate. However, love that needs to be earned by excessive giving ceases to be true love. It turns into a way to survive. As the insightful Carl Jung warned, kindness has a downside. An immoderate desire for perfection and universal approval leads to the suppression of one's own essence. A person driven by this desire says yes, when their inner voice screams no, maintains a smile on their face despite the emotional pain, and finds comfort for others when their own heart is broken into pieces. As a result, there is a gradual, almost imperceptible disappearance of the personality, which turns into a faceless element of someone else's life, always ready to help, but remaining invisible. However, it should be remembered that boundless kindness, devoid of common sense, is not a manifestation of compassion, but a path to self-destruction. True kindness implies respect for both others and oneself. The important thing is not striving to please everyone, but maintaining fidelity to one's nature. Jung argued that in order to achieve wholeness, it is necessary to look into the face of one's shadow, those aspects of the personality that a person has abandoned, and return them back. This isn't about becoming cruel or indifferent. It's about ceasing to dissolve into others. The most captivating individuals aren't those who give themselves away completely, but those who share from the depth of their truth, not from fear. Sooner or later, there comes a moment, quiet and devastating, when a person realizes they've built their identity on the desire to be needed, not to be known. They were always there, always giving, always kind, but people still left. Not because they were worthless, but because they didn't value themselves. Carl Jung believed that the path to psychological wholeness, which he called individuation, isn't about becoming someone else, but about becoming oneself. Not the version that plays a role, not the version that tries to please, but the version that exists even when no one is watching. Individuation is a complex and fascinating process of integrating all aspects of the personality that have previously been rejected or suppressed. It's a kind of pilgrimage to wholeness, requiring the courage to face one's own fears and doubts. It's about accepting those parts of yourself that seemed unacceptable, untamed anger, selfish desires, firm boundaries that may have been considered rude or inappropriate. It's important to emphasize that individuation isn't a striving for an unattainable ideal, but rather a search for authenticity and the true self. Being exclusively kind, always available, and agreeing with everything means existing only fragmentarily, remaining a shadow of a potentially possible personality. Carl Jung, a prominent psychologist and philosopher, argued that true strength and resilience arise when a person reclaims everything they once rejected. This process involves the courage to say what has long remained unsaid. I don't want to do this. I need time for myself. This doesn't suit me. Of course, this approach involves the risk of encountering discomfort and perhaps even rejection from others. However, in the end, it leads to greater visibility and significance in the world. Establishing personal boundaries attracts the attention of others. A confident no, instead of an automatic yes, makes people stop and think. A person gains definition, a clear shape and position. In today's world, full of contradictions and constant pressure, the ability to remain rooted in one's own truth becomes a truly magnetic force. Think of the people who inspire admiration, those who can change the atmosphere in a room just by their presence. They aren't necessarily loud and always available, but they possess inner strength and confidence, stemming from a deep connection with their true self. Herein lies the amazing paradox of human existence. The ability to say no paradoxically enhances the significance of your yes. Moments of absence, strangely enough, can make your presence in the memory of others truly unforgettable. This is the idea that Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung sought to convey when speaking about the importance of preserving mental energy. We should realize that our emotional, intellectual, and spiritual resources aren't limitless. They're like a valuable currency. And when we manage this currency wisely, our value increases not only in the eyes of others, but also in our own perception. Genuine individuation, manifested in everyday life, is expressed in the ability to choose rest instead of exhausting overload, in the ability to speak your truth even if your voice trembles with excitement, in the willingness to allow others to experience disappointment without constantly trying to save them from it, in creating a space of silence and observing what arises in it. It means abandoning the pursuit of an unattainable ideal and moving towards the exciting experience of authenticity. And here lies a hidden reward. When you stop trying to please everyone, you start to be noticed by the very people who are truly important to you. Energetic presence, the kind that remains after you leave, arises not from constantly being in sight, but from a deep knowledge of your own essence, the ability to protect your inner fire, and to appear in the right place with intention, not out of a sense of duty. In a modern world obsessed with constant connection, those who have mastered the art of strategic absence become truly unforgettable. They don't rush to respond to messages instantly. They don't throw around the word yes just to avoid conflict. They know how to disappear, not for the purpose of manipulation, but to regain strength, rethink what is happening, and return with something valuable to give to others, rather than just a desire to prove something. Carl Jung taught us not how to earn universal love, but how to achieve wholeness. And when a person attains this wholeness, they stop chasing attention, as their presence speaks for itself. Lena's story is a classic illustration of a life cycle that includes a meteoric rise, a painful fall, and a potential rebirth. She was the cornerstone on which many relied. Whether it was urgently getting friends to the right place, supporting a loved one in a difficult moment, or dutifully staying late at work at the request of her superiors, Lena was always ready to help. And it wasn't just her willingness to help, but also her absolute reliability, which over time became so commonplace that it ceased to be perceived as something special. Initially, those around Lena showered her with compliments, admiring her responsiveness and willingness to always be there. Words of gratitude sounded like well-deserved awards, giving her a sense of importance and uniqueness. However, the situation gradually began to change. Messages went unanswered, meetings were canceled at the last minute, and her name disappeared from group chats, invitations, and it seemed from people's memories. Lena was bewildered because she remained true to herself. She still came to the rescue, gave herself completely, and sacrificed her own interests for others. But despite this, she seemed to have become invisible. The silence that followed wasn't deafening, but it felt like a precise and painful surgical incision, like an unspoken reproach. One night, after 2 hours of agonizingly waiting for a friend who never showed up, Lena felt a numbness wash over her like an icy shell. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, she asked herself a question full of bitterness and disappointment. Why am I only needed when I'm useful? This question became her starting point. In a journey she had never suspected, books became her guides. Psychotherapy became a tool for self-discovery. And the pages of her personal diary were filled with streams of unspoken anger and buried desires. Ultimately, she discovered the works of Carl Jung. The theory of psychic energy resonated with her like a diagnosis. Years of excessive self-sacrifice had depleted her emotional resources. She began to study the concept of the shadow, those aspects of personality that she carefully concealed, striving to earn the love of those around her. Her anger, her needs, her own voice. For the first time in her life, Lena realized that her kindness was dictated not by a sincere desire, but by fear. Fear of being forgotten, of being unnecessary. That's why she tried to compensate for this fear with her excessive activity, tireless attention to others, and constant availability. However, Jung offered her an alternative path, the path of individuation, which consists not in striving to become better, but in achieving wholeness. It all started small. She stopped responding to messages instantly, learned to say no without accompanying the refusal with long apologies. One day she missed a party, preferring to spend the evening in silence, alone with her thoughts. At first, this caused discomfort. Those around her noticed the changes. Some distanced themselves, but then something unexpected happened. Others, on the contrary, began to show interest. Not because of her former convenience, but out of genuine curiosity. Are you okay? You seem to have changed. There's a certain strength about you. Lena didn't become more sociable, but she gained inner stability. Instead of expending energy in every conversation, she began to listen to herself, to her desires and needs, to what she was no longer willing to tolerate. She became less accessible, but more attractive. The very people who once ignored her now gravitated toward her. And it wasn't because of a new hairstyle, a different laugh, or a change of habits. but because she stopped giving herself away for free. Now she understood that love without boundaries is not love, but only its imitation, its fear disguised as kindness. An attention won through self-denial isn't worth fighting for. Lena didn't turn into an ice queen, she became discerning. As before, she gave warmth, but now consciously. Her love didn't run dry. She simply began to share it from an overflowing cup. Her presence, once commonplace, gained strength and became tangible. She regained control over her energy, set boundaries, and rediscovered herself. Lena didn't dissolve into oblivion. She finally manifested in all her glory. In our unbridled desire for universal adoration, we often overlook one paradoxical point. The more available we are, the less noticeable we become. We are taught from childhood that willingness to always and for everyone come to the rescue is a sign of virtue. However, in reality, constant availability turns our presence into a kind of background noise that ceases to be noticed. It's not that your kindness isn't appreciated, it's simply that your energy starts to be taken for granted. Long before modern concepts like burnout or emotional labor emerged, Carl Jung recognized this pattern. He believed that each person possesses a reservoir of psychic energy, a kind of emotional fuel, life force, and attention. And when we thoughtlessly expend this energy, we not only deplete ourselves, but also erode our individuality. Reflecting on the most charismatic people we've encountered, it becomes clear that their magnetism didn't stem from constant online presence or being perpetually available. On the contrary, they possessed a unique appeal arising not from a desire to please, but from an ability to protect their inner world. In today's world, where everyone strives to be visible, these individuals practice the rare art of strategic absence. They didn't spread themselves thin, and therefore, their appearance was always a significant event. Carl Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming a whole person. It's not living for the approval of others, but an existence based on self-knowledge, honesty, and inner strength. Ask yourself, where is your energy leaking? Who are you trying to save, change, or impress, sacrificing yourself in the process? The truth is, to be noticed, you don't need to try harder. You need to be more authentic. This means your agreement should carry weight. And to achieve that, you must be able to say no. It's about presence, not performance, about intention, not impulse. Protect your energy not out of selfishness, but out of self-respect. Those who truly value you won't want you to dissolve in attempts to earn their love. They will recognize you when you finally stand before them not as an internal helper, but as a whole, uncompromising individual. There are moments in everyone's life when their kindness goes unnoticed and unappreciated, as if their good intentions vanish into thin air. Don't interpret this as a failure in love or a sign of personal inadequacy. Rather, it indicates a dissonance of energies, a mismatch of vibrations between you and the world around you. Unfortunately, the modern world isn't always inclined to notice and reward simple human presence. Greater importance is placed on strength, energy, and the ability to assert oneself and defend one's interests. And here, psychic energy comes to the forefront, the inner strength that allows us to influence reality and achieve our goals. The paradox is that the more a person gives away their energy without conscious intention, without a clear understanding of where and why it's being directed, the more invisible and vulnerable they become. They seem to dissolve into the flow of others' desires and needs, losing their own identity. But don't despair. Now that you're aware of this pattern, you have the opportunity to reclaim your energy, learn to manage it, and direct it toward achieving your own goals. This knowledge is the first step toward gaining inner strength and harmony with the world around you.